You could come up with a plot, create a little action movie. Think in terms of trying to go with what you have. We were essentially college students. We were a few years older than that, but we picked, our characters were college students who were these weird brawler types, That sort of made sense to us, So if you're like 20 and you want to do a police detective movie, and you want to play the police detective and you're 20, it's not going to look right. By the time they reach detective, they're middle-aged people. So my point is, if it's going to be you and your friends acting in the film, like try to work with what you have, Look at who your friends are, what are their strongest suits, right to the strength of who your friends are, right to the strength of who you are. Maybe someone's got a boxing gym, so you can make a boxing movie. These shoots they're very difficult. And I have to be honest, now I'm like 46. I would not shoot like this anymore because the days were really long and it was really brutal. Also, too, shooting a film back then, there was not that much feature films being made in Connecticut. The home video market was still thriving in early 2000. So there was this feeling like if you made a film to the best of your ability, you could have a career as an independent filmmaker. And that, I think, lit a fire under a lot of people's behinds to really make a go of it. Nowadays, a lot of the money has dropped out of feature-length independent filmmaking, and because there's so much content, I don't know if the same drive is there for a lot of filmmakers to make a film because there's so much stuff out there. When we were making them, there was the feeling that it was somewhat special because you needed a lot of technical skill to be able to do this stuff, especially when you were working with 16mm film. And even when digital came in, digital was new, so there was a learning curve there. But now it's very easy to make a film. Like I was saying, the VHS Massacre documentaries, those were $500 features. And we really didn't spend much of any money on anything. So a lot of it is pre-production. Like all this stuff got planned out months and months. And I think we did a year of pre-production. That's something to, keep in mind on Fountain of Death or Land of College Prophets, as this is called, right? We did a year of pre-production, and so it was building the well for 6 months, it was getting all the outfits, and it was trying to choreograph like how the fight scenes would go and stuff like that. And it was a lot. Like, look at that shot. That's one of my favorite shots. I think that's a cool shot, So there are moments in this that I think look cool and hold up, but it's not all the time. So this is Paul's character is turning, into this monster. So he's going around attacking everyone. Paul was unavailable. An emergency came up, so Paul was not available for this fight scene the night of, but we had all these people there. So we got a stand-in to come in, and we shot out all the stuff with the other actors, and we tried to shoot the stand-in from behind and use various angles so you can see like this body type is different than Paul. Like Paul's a professional bodybuilder, and it'll cut back to this, which we tried to leave it dark to make it work, but we almost had a breakdown on set. If you can imagine, if you're shooting a 12-day, an 80-minute film, and in 12 days, you can't miss any day, and this was the big fight scene at night. We actually shot the whole scene to have it work where you never saw Paul's face. So we were protecting ourselves in that way. So it would have been the whole fight scene, and you never would have seen the front of Paul or his face. And we could have cut the film that way, and people would have been like, oh, that's an interesting choice, why'd you do that? But what had happened was, the next day when Paul wasn't available, we actually did inserts of just Paul's, his head and his upper body, and we spliced those in. So, like, that's a spliced in shot, him looking that way, and that's the stand-in, and then I think that's something we shot on the later date. So basically what we had to do is shoot on 2 different days to make it all work. But I think it came out all right, you know. So you're going to be doing that kind of problem solving. There's going to be a lot of things that don't go right. You might have to cut entire scenes, or you might have to think your way out of a hole where you don't have an actor one day because something happened, and you might have to rewrite something or cut something out. This had a lot of narration in it, voiceover narration, which I don't like now, but at the time I was obsessed with voiceover narration because we were coming off of the late 90s with like Shawshank Redemption and Green Mile and all that stuff. Voiceover was an easy way. People say it's lazy, but it wasn't easy to create more of a narrative string to piece the whole movie together. So we really needed it. It was written that way, but it helped us smooth over things that we couldn't shoot or that weren't working. You know, like this scene, I think it's lit pretty cool. Reminds me of like sort of an 80s horror type thing, you know. And here's the thing about this film. So you might be saying, well, this is sort of old-fashioned or whatever. Why am I watching this? It's like, well, this film actually, at the time it came out, was well received. Far more reviews were positive than negative. It was even fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And at the time, people liked it. They really thought it was like a Troma-style movie, and Troma actually would have picked it up at the time. But York Entertainment, they were more present in a lot of the video stores at the time, so we went to go with them. In hindsight, I don't know what the right choice would have been. Troma would have maybe given us more street cred. I don't know. But I'm happy to be working with Troma now on the VHS Massacre documentary, so I think it all worked out. I did a re-release of this film a few years back. Some people kind of made fun of it, like it was sort of just a bad movie, kind of like The Room or something like that. Anytime you do something that is even slightly outside of what is normal for filmmaking, it may not hold up over time, you may get made fun of, but you just have to roll with it. And I can look at this film and go, look, this was on Netflix, this was in Hollywood Video and Movie Gallery, this was a bestseller for York Entertainment, this was fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. And so you can try to make fun of it. For me, this was a big deal. It's just an example of how you can make a no-budget action movie. And you can tell we really tried. We tried really hard. We tried to, you know, if you look at how dirty I am with the makeup and everything. So when you're making an independent film or an independent horror film, you really have to give it your all. You know, even if you don't have like here, Chris Corbino, one of our buddies from high school, did 1 or 2 effects here. I think he did it when Phil's guts were hanging out. I think he did that shot, but a lot of the other stuff was just us trying to make ourselves look realistic to the moment because our characters had gotten beat up so bad before this part. That's Chris Corbino on the ground, actually. That's so funny. This is a scene where the characters are sort of figuring out how to fix reality. We showed almost all my movies. You show to audiences. You show to your friends and family, but then you try to get more people in there. You should kind of have your own test screenings. Test screenings are there to make sure the film makes sense. And so with every film, we've had some sort of test screenings, even if it's just like friends and friends of friends. Some of your family will pull punches. Some of your family and friends will not pull punches. You get enough people to watch it, you'll get a sense of feedback. This is the problem with criticism. People might diagnose a problem correctly. They might say there's something wrong with this scene. I would do this, this, and this. Quite often their solutions are not good. I would do this, this, and this, but usually there's something in the diagnosis. They pointed out an actual problem with the film. When people give you feedback on the film, try to listen to what they're saying, look at the diagnosis of the problem, and you may find a different solution than they're offering. I think most of the time that happens. The emergency room, we stole that shot, but the reverse angle wasn't even there. You can do a lot of tricks like that. So the emergency room, the front angle was standing in front. We stole those shots. But when it's the reverse angle and we're actually having the dialogue, that's just down the street in front of my house. So that's a clever way of being able to steal a location, but still having enough time to shoot dialogue. So it was the reverse angle. This is very Bruce Willis inspired, being like bloody and dirty and all that stuff. It was a pain because every morning we had to sort of get up and bloody and dirty ourselves. I have to say, like, most of these shoots are going to be a little bit miserable. There's no other way to say it, but you're striving towards a goal, you know. You're probably going to be editing for 6 months to a year to smooth everything out, get everything ready. I did the score for this film, which I wouldn't do now. I used Tim Coolig. Tim Coolig's my best friend, and he creates original scores, and he produces and stuff like that with me on films. At the time, I think I was so obsessed with scoring films. I scored Everything Moves Alone and Land of College Prophets, and I think it came out okay, but you do that kind of thing, you're going to be working like wall to wall for a year. That's all you're going to be doing is editing and doing score, and it's really rough. A lot of the reason why we acted in the film, we did like it. You know, I was a bit of a ham when I was younger, and I kind of liked acting. If I could go back and do it, maybe we should have had some of the other people in the film be more the main characters, you know. Done more casting and tried to find people to play the role, and that would have allowed us to maybe concentrate more on directing. Mike Oransky, who you don't see on camera that much, he was in like a restaurant scene. He is co-directing and DPing, which is why it really did come out pretty well. It had he's got a good eye, so that's really what saved us, I think, is Mike's eye for detail and for blocking. And we did storyboard some of this. We'd storyboard. I very often, if you imagine a script, you have one side with print, one side blank. I would always draw storyboards on the blank side. I think that's what Phil and Mike would do too. And we always would collaborate on what we thought was good. I think all three of us took a director credit, which was kind of strange. And it's kind of the only movie we did Everything Moves Alone like that, and I think Oransky took a director credit, I took a producer credit, but really all of it was kind of like the Coen brothers. All the roles were really shared, and we did Land of College Prophets that way, and that's pretty much it. By the time I got to making London Betty, I was solo directing. Then I co-directed with John Gorman on Exorcism of Fleet Marish. VHS Massacre documentary, the first one, co-directed with Ken Powell. And second VHS Massacre, that was solo. So over the years I've done a lot of collaborating, but quite often you have to do that to team up and have a shared vision so you can get things done. This is just my parents' kitchen for feature-length films, be it narrative or documentary. You're usually teaming up with one or two people, and then quite often you're chipping in some money. So on Everything Moves Alone, my brother Bruce bought us a computer and chipped in a couple grand. I chipped in a couple grand, Phil did, and then Mike did. And then we pulled that together, and it was about $9,000. So we made that 90-minute 16mm feature-length film. Land of College Prophets, Bruce kicked some money into that one. We ended up just paying out of pocket for some various things, because you end up paying for stuff to edit it and then do the deliverables and all that stuff. So, it ends up adding up. The odds of you getting a return on your independent film is fairly low. There's not a heck of a lot of money in it. You kind of do it because you love it. And I would never make an independent film and spend money that you don't have, or spend money that you can't spare. You should try to work with what you have. I mean, look, if you're careful, you can save up and buy a cinema camera. Like I said, some of the Blackmagic Pocket ones are great. And get a handful. Get some old lenses. Go out to a thrift store and buy a handful of old lenses, and buy adapters for them, and put together a movie and shoot it. You do have to be aware of what is sellable you know, what makes money. This is another montage we did, which I love this kind of stuff, but, you know, why does this look good? It looks good because it's at night, you know. That's the other thing too, if you're trying to do like sci-fi or horror, you know, shoot at night, add light in, and it will look moody, you know, magically. Or if you're shooting inside, kill all the lights, then add lights in, you know, directional lights, you know, put a film together. And you do have to be aware of genre, like I was saying, like, so just to be honest, horror is a really good genre to be a first-time filmmaker in. You know, why is that? It's because even bad horror is watchable, whereas bad comedies are unwatchable, bad dramas are unwatchable, bad rom-coms. Bad horror is easier to watch than a bad adventure film, you know. So I always like this moment with Russ, his character Jonah Joe climbs out of the belly of the well. We tried to make this sort of these fable themes. Maybe we didn't know what we were doing, but we were really trying to do something cool and mythic, you know, within the confines of being in suburbia. You know, looks like we're out in the middle of the forest. That looks like Russ is pretty far down that well. We dug a hole maybe 4 feet down, and we just filled the bottom of the water. So that was a way to make it seem like, you know, he was down there. And we put the camera way in the rafters of the well pointing down. So there's a shot where it looks like he's actually kind of far down there. This is another thing too, like that shot pointing up in the well, you can, if you scroll back and look at that, that is just a lamp light that I tinted blue with a roll, like a tube, yeah, right there, a tube of cardboard paper pointing up, because I had to do that after the shoot to sort of create an upward angle, and that's what we came up with, because we couldn't obviously create, I mean, that would have been like 50 feet up the well, you know. So we just tried to make it look like sunlight was at the top of the well, or sky was at the top of the well. By having a character tell a story, he's telling the story on camera, what that will allow you to do is you need much less footage to fulfill that story. So it's like we couldn't shoot that much stuff in the bottom of the well or tell a whole story or of a monster well, right? We can shoot some stuff and have it look okay. But if you have the character tell a story, where it doesn't work, he can be on camera talking. Where it does work, you can be cutting away to stuff. So a lot of the movie is built that way. I'm not saying it's the, you know, if you had unlimited resources, you know, to shoot him down there, but it was a solution to try to build the reality of the story, is to have narration and have character telling stories and lots of flashbacks to try to world build. So, and this stuff was shot very early in the morning. We had botched the shoot at night. It was my fault. We were working in low light, and the iris was fixed. And so as the shoot went on, the stuff got darker and darker, and it was unusable. So the next morning, everyone was like, yeah, screw it, let's just reshoot it. So we reshot it in the morning, and iris down to make it look like the sun was setting. And I think it actually came out well. Like, to me, this kind of looks like film. But if you're in broad daylight with this camera, the color space is not very good, and things blow out, and it looks electronic. Nowadays with the Blackmagic camera, it handles daylight better, but I would still say the same thing, even if I was shooting. I'd love to shoot my next movie all at night. I mean, it sounds like it would be miserable. You do need to spend some money on lights. I recommend Dracast lights because you could change the color temperature, and they're highly portable. Get yourself a big gel kit and a flag kit, portable flag kit. Get yourself that cinema camera with the lenses. Get a boom mic, a boom pole. That's the other thing, is most of these narrative shoots that I've done is you're primarily using a boom mic and a boom pole, and the reason is just pure efficiency. When you're shooting a feature-length film in a couple weeks or even less than a couple weeks, you really need to move fast. And moving fast means that you're not pausing to hook up lavalier mics or wireless mics. Those mics are kind of a nightmare. You can, nowadays, do something a little easier. You can have a portable Zoom recorder, stick a lapel mic and just hit record and stick it in your pocket. You can do it that way. At the time, we were thinking that we were going to be a movie factory and that we were going to keep making these films. You get an expensive, high quality boom mic with a rye coat to protect against the wind. Boom operators to be very careful to move the mic around to pick up whoever's talking, but it can be done. It's one of the ways that you have to move fast, so just keep that in mind. There are scenes where you have 4 or 5 people talking at the same time. That's too much for a no-budget film, but a high-quality boom mic with a good operator, then you can make it work. And over the years, we've had some very awesome people. Our friend Isaiah Entwa-Mensah, he did the boom operator for Exorcism of Fleet Marish, and he was on London Betty as well. So this was sort of the big battle scene, and it sort of has a Power Rangers feel to it. The fight choreography is essentially us kind of repeating the same 5 moves over and over. It can look okay. I mean, you just take the parts that work and you cut away when it doesn't. But you can move through a fight scene quicker. With Phil, this was mapped out because it had to be very specific. Paul had limitations with that helmet and seeing. So we initially had this huge fight scene with Paul and the rest of the characters, and it's still pretty long, but I think some of the reality of doing elongated fight scenes kind of kicked in during this time where you start to look, you're on the film set and you're like, man, we have to get through a lot of pages and plot. And so it's still several minutes long, which is not nothing for an action scene, but I would say it's truncated in order to make it work. So they succeeded. They have to plant this tree in several locations, and that's sort of the spell that makes everything go back to normal, Dick Bowen has been in a lot of my films over the years. I think he's just an excellent actor, and he's always up for anything. He's hilarious. I would say almost every time I made a film, we were really swinging for the fences. And so I think you really have to do that kind of stuff. I mean, if you just think about this scene, what that last scene was, how many people were in that scene volunteering and showing up in ridiculous outfits and staying there 8 hours to shoot, that scene. And, it's just a level of dedication, So I thank you to everyone who was involved in these movies over the years. The underlying elements of this film are still totally doable. If you have the camera ready, like I said, we spent $3 or $4 grand on gear. There was probably a third of the budget was gear, right? So if you have the gear already, then the cost of the movie goes way down, which is partially why Exorcism of Fleet Marish was only like a $6,000 film, is because we had a lot of the stuff. You can't be afraid to make mistakes and to look like a fool and or to be received a certain way. Because the truth is, with a lot of the films over the years, previous to the internet, a film, if it didn't even have to be good, it just had to have something memorable and likable about it. And those films would gain an audience over time, especially when there was physical media, There's really never been an easier time to make independent feature films. You can find an audience. Like, for instance, the VHS Massacre documentary, to team up with Troma, to have Troma put those out, that was the perfect audience. And now millions of people have seen those because they've been on Peacock and Mubi and Tubi and all these venues. If you're doing this for the art and you really want to be an independent filmmaker, there's really never been a better time, because it's cheaper than ever to make a film. The quality you can get out of not spending that much money is higher than ever, and there are venues where you could get on. I know some of my students who have had their stuff on Tubi. And Tubi is, I think Fox owns that. That's a very cool, unique format, I tend to have my films distributed through companies. I'm using a company, MVD Group, right now. They get on various formats. So there's a lot of different formats you could get on. through using distribution companies. And the good thing is as an artist, you're already going to have to finish the film and do the deliverables, which could be like artwork and posters and masters and all this stuff. And you're already taking the ball so far. It's nice to have someone, a distribution company, to actually put the film out. Now, you still have to promote your own stuff on social media and stuff like that too. So it never really stops. You're going to put a year or two of effort into a film, a feature-length film. There's no ways about it. But if the film finds an audience, you might get cool things back for a couple years, 2, 3, 4 years, because people may reach out to you like, hey, I saw your movie, I thought it was cool. They say movies are never finished, they're abandoned. And usually that means like the work is never really done even when the film is out, but you just kind of choose to move on to a next project, I was always compelled to make these movies. That's all I ever wanted to do. Not everyone's like that. Some people think they just want stardom or money. And the money usually comes from the corporate side of it. So I've made money at CBS, and NBC Universal, and IGN. You can make money, but that's typically working on other people's projects. You're using your creative engine to do that. And I did that for a while. I did that for 10 years full time, and then another 5 years part-time. There's definitely money to be made in the entertainment industry as a career, but typically I would say most of the time you don't exactly get to do what you want. That's where independent filmmaking comes in. And storytelling, narrative independent filmmaking, I think can be a lot of fun. And documentary is great too. But that's about it for this film. Yeah, this has been the $12,000 action film. You can do it yourself. Anyone can do it. Like I said, this film was successful in its time. It was one of the, it was on the earliest form of Netflix. It was on Hollywood Video and movie galleries, and it was bestseller for the company York Entertainment. Actually, from what I understand, did help some of the people involved get work later, get jobs later, because it was a legitimate release. We'll have the next part. That's Mike Oransky right there. The next part will be coming up soon, and make sure to give me any feedback. Drop me a line or comment. All right, have a good one.